Well, wouldn't you know, here we are to rank another season of Mad Men episodes. Oh my goodness, look, episode 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 13, if you can believe it. Yes, 13 episodes in a season, who knew? And this time, I got some physical notes this time. Got all of the plot lines written out so I don't have to wander through a Wikipedia article like last time. But, let's see if this is any more efficient at all. First of all, what I like to do with these, which is something I haven't written down at all, is do a bit of an overall seasonal review, because I am rewatching these as I go back to rank them here. My 17th rewatch of Mad Men or something. There was one scene I didn't remember, and it was the opening scene of, let's say, episode 9, probably, because it was Don in his hotel room by himself, and he, woke up, and I was like, oh, I've never seen this scene before in my life, even though I've seen it, 4 or 5 times, but it was the only scene in the whole season I didn't remember, basically. As soon as the scene started, I was like, oh, yeah, that's this scene. So that was pretty funny. Anyway, when I was, 5 episodes in, I was like, season 2 is, pretty much definitely worse than season 1, which is very shocking to me. But by the end, I think it's probably better. It's very interesting. And this kind of highlights that I think probably the first 3 episodes of this season are probably worse than any... Well, that's not true, actually. The first 2 episodes, I would probably say, are the 2 worst episodes in Mad Men so far. I'm second-guessing myself in saying that, but we'll go with that for now. Because episode 3, I'm pretty sure I'm putting in A tier. And overall, this season is going to have the less in B tier than last time did. Last time, I think we had 3, maybe. This time, I think it's only going to be 2, but we make up our mind as we go. I don't know if it's set in stone exactly. But true. I think a lot of the focus before the plot really starts to pick up in this season, a lot of it is Don and Betty domestic problems, which are never my favorite storylines. Now, the domestic problems they have towards the back end of the season, which is their first separation, basically, I do think that is really good. But the first bits are them negging each other at home, and then there's it's kind of over 2 episodes, the plot line of wanting to discipline Bobbie more, and Betty just kind of being annoying. It is funny how it... I end up thinking the season is incredibly cleverly written structurally. And it's differently written, I think. The only season that could be like this, which I'm excited to see if it is like this, is season 3. Because season 1 is not like this. I haven't even explained what this is. And 4 through 7 are certainly not like this. Where this season is a lot more serialized. It's very interesting. They set up the Bobbie discipline stuff. I think that's episode 4. Yes, it is. But there's set up for that in episode 2. And there's Joan's husband, which is Greg, of course, everybody's favorite Mad Men character, is only really introduced in episode 12, but he has 2 scenes previously that set up that he's probably a prick. And then it's paid off there. There's lots of serialization type things. Whereas oftentimes Mad Men, and it isn't as much as The Sopranos or even Boardwalk Empire, they all have the same philosophy where every episode is like a little movie, is what Matthew Weiner and David Chase and Terrence Winter always say. This is probably the season that is least like that, with me halting myself because season 3 might be like this, though I don't remember it being that way. Now, obviously, all seasons have things that set up into each other, but there are scenes in episodes that are kind of disconnected from the overall episode that are just there to set up things later, which seems like the way you should write TV shows or whatever, but it's very abnormal for the 3 shows I just mentioned. So it is interesting. And it's interesting that they sort of went to this and then went away from it. It leads to some clever, some good moments, I think. And I think there's positive and negatives to both ways. It's just a little odd. I should really think of some examples right now. I also think a lot of this season is... Now, this was kind of the case with the Bert sort of office stuff in season 1, where it feels like there is a main plot line going through, and that has a scene in episode. Like Duck and Don's relationship, or Duck and his relationship with alcohol, or... Roger and Don's relationship, and that they sort of all have individual scenes that go into an overall story. Whereas I feel later, and The Sopranos is even more like this, is things will just all happen in one episode. And when you think about it, you remember it happening over multiple episodes, but it really is just one episode. My biggest example for this in The Sopranos is always Tracy is only in one episode of that show. Now, Tracy is the girl that Ralph beats to death, the stripper girl that was pregnant with his kid or whatever. I would have sworn before my most recent rewatch that was like a 4-episode seeding arc, but it wasn't. It was all in one episode. Her at Ralph's house, Silvio beating her up, her trying to get close to Tony, her baking for Tony, and her dying all in one episode. It's a little crazy. And so this is the Mad Men season that is least like this, in fact. We'll see as we go through. Oh, even like the adoption stuff. Like, this is kind of split over 2 episodes. But it's interesting because it's never like episode 11 and 12. It's always like episode 10 and then episode 12, which I think is actually where the adoption stuff with Pete and Trudy happens. But true. And then if you think about it, you can also track like overall character arcs. Like, Pete is like unsure at where he is. And the big question with him is sort of parenthood, both with his father dying and Trudy wanting to have a kid and him not really caring too much about either, frankly. And then he like has an infatuation with Peggy that also comes to a climax, of course, in the last episode. And that is also to do chiefly with parenthood because they had a kid together and he doesn't know until he knows. And then, my goodness, isn't he upset about it? Betty is obviously about being unhappy and going on the verge of doing something about it by getting rid of Don, but then sort of getting trapped back into it. Don is about who he is and all that stuff, and that's Don's arc in every season, but also the him versus Duck stuff is pretty big. Duck basically falling back down is a big thing. Roger's unhappiness is also a big thing. There's even a lot of Bert stuff. There aren't as many good Bert scenes, I think, in this season. But there is Bert stuff about him being very trepidatious about this deal. But sort of getting talked into it. Which will come back later too. And it's interesting characterization for him too. Shall we get into some episodes? I think that was enough overall stuff. Initially, I thought it wasn't that great. I was like, oh no, this is probably the worst season. But then it definitely came back in the end. I think, and this is a spoiler alert, but the season finale is probably the best episode in the show so far. It's definitely better, in my opinion, than the season 1 finale, which I know people won't necessarily agree with. It is interesting, though, that the season 2 finale is kind of the season 3 finale, but not as cool. Like, not as good, rather. So it's like, it's super great, but it's almost like the next one is kind of better. Well, the next one is sort of a self-contained, everything comes to a head episode, where it's sort of the heist episode. And it's maybe the best episode in the whole show. Whereas this one, it also feels the same thing. It's like Don is finally back after 3 or 2 episodes, kind of 3 episodes away, because in episode 10, he's kind of with Betty at her father's house the whole time. And he's got to catch up on so much things, and every scene with Don in that episode is just unbelievably great. It's like Pete showing up and saying, "Where the fuck were you?" Roger showing up saying, "Where the fuck were you?" Roger saying, "We solved it." Duck having Duck trying to, well, he actually doesn't talk to Don beforehand. But like Duck's having a meeting with Pete, and then Pete goes and stooges it off to Don. And then he's also reunites with Peggy, and that's a cute little moment. And then even he has a moment with Joan. And then, oh my goodness, they're in the big meeting, and he's telling, "I don't have a contract." It's just like, and then he goes back to Betty. Also, he goes back to Betty at the beginning. There's so many like reuniting, and it's like, whoa, so much stuff has happened. We've got the character reactions to things that have happened. Oh, it's terrific. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Why don't we start with season 1, episode 1, which might be the worst one. It's a very, very odd, very soft episode. It feels like it should be like a 4th episode of the season down type kind of episode. The plot lines for this one mainly is the Jackie Kennedy like thing that's on TV where she's touring the White House, and then Don and Betty are like at a hotel trying to be sexy or whatever, and Don's dick doesn't work because he's sad about Rachel probably. And like they run into Betty's old friend who is now a prostitute, and then she has the thing with the car breaking down where she kind of flirts with prostituting herself to get the thing for free from the guy. And that's kind of the main through line. The other main through line is young people. And like times are changing, where it's like Duck wants to hire young people, which we get Kurt and Schmitty. And then they also get a Xerox machine representing sort of like change and stuff. Peggy's back, and there's kind of mystery around that. She's mean to Lois, which is a cool scene. Lois is around. What a lady. Other than that, Don's at the doctor's, which sort of mirrors Betty being at the doctor's in the last episode. Betty's on the horses now, and Don sees somebody in a bar reading that meditations book that he mysteriously sends to somebody at the end. There's not really an A plot to me in this episode, or a super exciting thing in this episode. There's some cool scenes with Don and Duck, and I think there's a good one with Don and Roger, but it's like very, I don't know, this prostitution line, it definitely feels like a mid-season Betty housewife episode. But it is the season premiere, which, I don't know, is very weird. It's probably the weakest season premiere. Obviously, the pilot is great. Honestly, I don't remember the season 3 one too much. Season 4 is one of the best episodes in the whole show. Season 5 is probably similar. Season 5, the two-parter? No, that's season 6, which those are both great. Season 5 is Zooby Zooby Zoo, right? Is it? It has to be, yeah. But that was definitely a two-parter too, I think. Season 7, episode 1? What the fuck was that? That's the Freddy opening. That one's great, and then the last season 7B is great. So we've just definitively proved it, unless the season 3 premiere that I'm probably going to watch right after this because I'm addicted, unless that one's worse. Can I think of what happens in that? Lane would be introduced. Other than that, I really can't remember. Peggy's got like short hair, but she has that in this season, which I definitely remembered as a season 3 thing, so it was interesting that it did happen now. But true. Season 1, episode 1, kind of a bit boring. Probably the loosest Mad Men episode ever. Maybe the worst Mad Men episode ever, but, interesting. Episode 2 is also one I don't really like. This is the Pete's father is dead in the plane episode. It's fine. Like with Betty-centric episodes, Pete-centric episodes are kind of, they're not hit or miss, because it's not like there's any bad ones. But some of them are the really great Mad Men episodes, and some of them are just like, okay. And it's like, I would rather be with Don and Roger right now. And that's kind of how I feel throughout this one. Though there is a bit of Don and Roger in this one too, I think. We meet Peggy's family for the first time in this episode. They're also, that's another thing. So for like the first half of the season, the main plots are like Pete and his family, Betty, not Betty and her family, Peggy and her family, Don and Bobbie, and I don't know. Those are kind of like the main plot lines, and those are not really my favorite plot lines from any of those characters. I think Bobbie and Don has definitely grown on me, and Jimmy is obviously a great character. But all those other ones, like, I like Pete's brother a lot. I don't really like any of the stuff with his mother ever. It's not like my favorite stuff. Even like later when it's funnier and she's like losing her mind and her getting murdered and stuff like that, that's like more funny, I guess. Though here it's fine. It's not like I'm complaining like it's bad or anything. But it's like these are like, again, least favorites out of all the possible plot lines here. But what else do we have in this one? Obviously, this is the loyalty one because Duck initially wants Pete to help. Pete rejects help, but then he shows up later and helps. They make Don fire their other airline, and there's a bit of scene there. There's also an interesting, like, and I guess this plays into episode 1. Don's dick isn't working. He wants, there's the pretty Chinese actress or hostess that I think might be the last scene of this episode, where she's like, you want to go on a date, bro? And he's like, no, not tonight or whatever. And that sort of, I think this is supposed to be because he's depressed about Rachel, right? But it's been like 2 years. And it's interesting that then Bobbie is the one that sort of brings him out of it by being extremely forward. There's probably something to that I've never really thought too much about. Don's early season 2 sexual haze and what it represents. Just him being bored generally. You'd think he'd have another girlfriend by now. It's been 1.5 years, my goodness. But true, what else is in this episode? This one opens with the pool party. It was just funny because it facilitates some good Trudy and Pete stuff. I think Kitty is also introduced here. Her and Sal are like freaking out about how forward Ken is. And then Joan's there, of course. And there's the typewriter, and Joan is mean to the girlfriend this episode. Joan's jealous of Paul. Can you believe it? I have cards. Oh, and serialization written down. We already talked about serialization. This is also the episode where Francine and, oh my goodness, how could I forget that guy's name, who's gotten really fat? and talks about how he wants to fuck this high school girl or something. God, Carlton, of course, Fat Carlton. Who could forget? Could this be his final scene in the whole show? Maybe he's in season 3. Obviously, Francine is in it as late as season 7, right? And Francine and Betty scenes are like my favorite Betty scenes. So, but yes, and then this is what we set up a bit of the Bobbie misbehaving thing where he says he didn't. No, this isn't the radio. He's stealing the treats or whatever, and Betty's freaking out. He's a little liar, didn't you know? He traced something. But true. And those are the extent of the plot lines. Like I said, not my favorite. Not the most scintillating plot lines here. Episode 3 is when we really start to pick up, though. This is definitely an A-tier episode. This is Jimmy's introduction. This is also Bobbie's introduction. Bobbie and Don do get together in this episode and everything like that. This is also the first real episode of Arthur trying to sleep with, who is played by the gay guy from Revenge. I can't remember the actor's name, but Arthur is the horse guy. He rides horses with Betty and Betty's friend. Is Betty's friend's name Christine? Maybe, I'm trying to remember. Probably the weakest Betty plot ever, but I was like, what's season 3? And then I remembered season 3 is Henry. God damn it! So that's a good subplot. We like Henry. Well, we like Henry's subplot. I don't know if we like Henry. How could he steal our main guy's girlfriend? That's not very nice. Oh, this is also Harry inventing the TV department. He opens the thingy. It is interesting. 2 and 3, Paul and Harry episodes. It is also interesting. Like, when was the calculus done to, like Harry is the guy, like, not Paul and not Ken. Like, he will be the next. Though they do shift this a little bit towards the end. Obviously, Ken gets a bunch of stuff later on. Paul, not so much. But it's interesting when they would have done that calculus in, like, the writing room. True. Oh, I've always really liked the scene Harry has with Sal in this episode, where he's like, where Sal's like telling him what to do, and like he should have just thrown it away, and they would have reissued it anyway in the envelope, and he gets him to like spill everything, and Harry's like a nervous wreck. And this is also, I think, the first time we actually see. Well, no, it would have been last episode at the house party. Well, we get into Jennifer and Harry's relationship. Is she ever seen past? Oh, she probably at Zooby Zooby Zoo, right? I was gonna say, is she ever seen after that? But she's like bullying Harry along. She's a very assertive wife, and he's like this subservient sort of husband. And I think after like he's come back and said, "I'm head of the television department" or whatever, he's like the little spoon in the scenario. Betty cry. Oh, that's the end of the episode, because the end of the episode is, of course, Don fingering Bobbie in that bathroom or whatever, and Jimmy apologizing. That's a great scene. And then Betty crying at the end, I'm so happy that I get to be part of your life, but she's actually fucking miserable. Which is also a nice setup, because there is a scene after a very similar scene to this where Bobbie and Jimmy are there. The scene where Jimmy tells Betty that they're getting cheated on, basically, where they're also in the car and it's quiet, but instead she just throws up later. So it's a nice little setup for that. Also, the Hindenburg. That guy had a fat wife. Could you believe that? Episode 4, it's got the iconic American Airlines failed pitch shot. Look, I made it the little thingy here. Now, this is our first potential S. Let me remind myself by looking at my notes exactly what happened. So, obviously, the American Airlines pitch. Now, this is only like the last 20 minutes of the episode, which I definitely remembered it being the whole episode. But like 30 minutes in, Bobbie touches the thing on the stove, and he has to go to the hospital, and so Sally has to go with Don in to pitch American Airlines, whatever. And Peter's there with the littlest shorts you've ever seen. So that's sexy. But yes, and then there's... the show will do this a lot more later on, and in the second half when we're in the other office, where we'll do like we gotta crank it down, this is a big pitch and thinking about things episode. They do it with Chevy or whatever car they have, Jaguar as well too, I think. Here it's not really that, and obviously there's the anticlimax of Shel Keneally. I can't believe I remember that random guy's name. He got fired or whatever. So it wasn't worth anything. True. That was a build-up to say something. Oh, it's only half an episode, which is interesting. It's like Joan is looking after Sally, which is kind of cute and interesting. Sally has a scene with Paul, which is interesting. And Sally's talking about sex a lot because I think her and Bobbie catch Don on top of Betty at the beginning of the episode. This is also the main Bobbie disciplining one. Now we're talking about the kid Bobbie here, not Don's girlfriend Bobbie. Don throws the thingy or whatever, and he has the monologue to Betty about how when his father hit him, it just made him want to murder him and stuff like that. And Betty sort of backs down. Also, in the middle of this is Margaret talking about how she doesn't want a wedding or whatever, and Roger saying, "Your mother wants a wedding," which is a great line. And also Roger with the call girl, who he like sees, and this call girl has a personality, and she like pretends to be the guy's wife to like play a joke on Roger, and then Roger pays for 17 dates with her or something like that. But true. So all that stuff is interesting. I like this episode a lot. This is also the first Peggy. This is the introduction of the priest, of course. Peggy's sort of love interest for this season. What a great setup too. What a great tease of like her family have just started to like her again, and now she's going to seduce. She's going to be a black witch and seduce the sexy priest, and they're all going to be very mad. It turns out the sister is mad at her for not even getting to fuck the pretty priest, so that's not really cool. I've got sisters written down here. Oh yeah, the sisters' first introduction. This is also the episode where, well, actually no, it's not the first introduction. That was 2 episodes ago. But it's also the sister confessing to the priest. What the fuck is the father's name? I don't remember. He's that guy from other things. She basically stooges off to him that Peggy's a no good, dirty S word. We wouldn't say that word about Peggy. And that she seduced a married man or something terrible, just terrible. And this is also the Easter egg. The Easter egg scene is the last scene in this episode. It's on the verge of S. I think this is a low S tier episode. It's very memorable. A bunch of things. What do I have written down in super small text here? At the loose. What do you think that means? Does that say loose? At the leave? We'll never know what I wrote down when I wrote that one down. And then we get to episode 5, which is definitely... Hold on, I'm turning my phone light on to see if I can get... At the least? At the... noose? What the fuck could I be talking about here? We're not moving on until I figure this out. At the house? True, somebody probably was at a house in this episode, but we move on. The crash episode, plus finally finding out what happened to Peggy and how she got out of the situation. Also, Pete jerking off, so that was pretty epic. Oh, and Joan got engaged in this episode too. So those are the things that are in this episode. Obviously, the Bobbie Peggy scenes are really, really great. Don't be a man, be a woman, whatever. That's a great line, a great scene. Also, this is Jane's introduction. This episode is called The New Girl, which is cute because Jane is the new girl and she's being walked around like Peggy was by Joan. Except Jane is much more equipped for this situation and will stand up and knows what she's doing, and in ways Peggy didn't. But this is also the episode where Peggy stops being the new girl, basically, where she starts calling Don at the end of the episode. She has to bail him out, all that stuff. The crash. One of my favorite Betty Don scenes is when he comes back after the crash, and they have like this argument, and it's good. But true. Oh, also we see Rachel in this episode. This is the season 2 episode where she comes back, where Bobbie and Donna like having dinner. That was great. Tilden Cats, which gets a callback later on in the Freddy episode. Is there much more to say about this? This episode is just quintessential good stuff. The Peggy payoff, the move forward, it'll shock you how much this didn't happen, is probably a top 5 most iconic Mad Men scene. I don't know if it's actually a top 5 scene. I'd put it in the top 20, but it's terrific. And then also her family, and there's 2 separate scenes in the flashback. Great episode for Peggy and for Don, and even for Bobbie, I think. So, what a definitive S tier episode. Episode 6 is the Jackie and Marilyn episode. See, we're starting to pick up. Season 2 is starting to get great. The Jackie Marilyn idea is probably one of the most famous or iconic pitches in Mad Men, or ideas at least. So it's interesting that it didn't work and nobody bought it. It's definitely Paul's best idea ever. Though it is funny that, like, part of the joke is that it's also a terrible idea. Like, men think it's a great idea, but all the women don't think it's a good idea. And it's completely dismantled when Peggy's in the meeting, and Peggy's like, which one am I? And they don't have an answer, because obviously Peggy is like a fleshed out person, and so she doesn't fit into any of these, like, metrics. And even when they do the thing about The Office, the only character they point to that we know anything about, well, I think they actually point to Jane for a Jackie, but it's Joan as a Marilyn. And the only reason they do that is so they can have the line about how, well, really Marilyn's just a Joan or whatever. I wonder what Christina Hendricks' reaction was when she read that line, because that's like a pretty big compliment, and it's pretty cute. And who wrote that? You better hope it's one of the girls. But yes, the Jackie and Marilyn thing, Joan versus Peggy. I think this is the only Joan versus Peggy sort of scene we get in this, which they were so great in season 1, and it might be the last one we, like, formally get, because Joan isn't in a lot of season 3, and then after that they're kind of on the same side. But it's like, stop dressing like a little girl, and then it ends with Peggy going to the strip club with the fellas at the end. My goodness, so much fun. This is also the Bobbie breakup episode. Oh, this is the episode where, like, a million things happen. Because this is also the Duck family episode. But it's also the bikini episode. So there's, like, a million things going on in this episode. And that is another thing with season 2 generally, I will say, is that these episodes are packed full of a lot of, like, it feels like most of these episodes have A, B, C, and D plot lines. And there's lots of little scenes, and there's even scenes setting up things from the future. And I wonder if, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. I don't know if maybe these episodes would be better if they were more focused. Like, if all of the Bobbie misbehaving stuff was put into one episode, and then we moved some stuff over and stuff like that. I'm really not sure. But this is a busy fucking episode. Because there's the Duck family stuff, which is actually pretty good. I remember it being, like, depressing and not really liking it before this, but it's, like, good at, like, fleshing him out. It's also interesting that he doesn't drink. I definitely remembered him drinking in this episode, but he doesn't. He, like, gets rid of the dog instead. Chauncey. Bye Chauncey. And then there's that awkward scene where Pete is like, I should get a dog for the office or something. It's like the worst idea you've ever heard, but Pete believes it so sincerely, and it's such a weird little Pete detail. Don and Duck have the true scene. There's lots of Pete and Peggy in this episode. We're very much keeping them connected, so it doesn't feel like the final scene comes out of nowhere. And it's all good. Pete. Oh, this is also the episode where Pete sleeps with the girl whose mother is in the other room. There is too much in this episode. No, there's a lot in this episode. I don't know if it's too much. There's a shit ton. The Bobbie breakup. This bikini scene with Betty where Don gets mad at her, the bikini scene runway thing at the Veterans Day thing. It's also the Veterans Day thing where Don has to stand up and feel like a loser and Sally's like clapping at him. And then it's also the episode that ends with Sally looking at Don and Don thinks to how he like tied Bobbie up and left her there. There's also the episode where Bobbie reveals she has kids and stuff. There's a lot in this episode. I had aspirations of maybe putting in an S, but I think it's probably a high A tier episode if we're just being safe. Episode 7. Oh my goodness, look at this thumbnail here. This is the finding out that we're getting cheated on here. It's also interesting that I think I had remembered it, that the last Bobbie scene was the breakup scene where she gets tied up, but it's not. They do have one final scene here where they're like talking in a group, and Betty and Jimmy are looking over at them. I dropped my paper, goddammit. The painting. What the fuck does that mean? Oh, Bert has a painting. And there's like a Harry plotline, and they break into the office, and then, oh, this is the Joan firing Jane scene, episode, and Jane going to Roger and getting back. This stuff with Jane at the office is really interesting. And it kind of makes me wish we got more of it. But we don't really get much more of it. Jane I do really like Jane as a character. And obviously she's mainly used in Roger plotlines later, to great effect. But it would have been more interesting if she had hung around, I think, a little bit more, or a character had gone in a different direction. This is the Don Carr episode. We also get the first Anna flashback here, where because Don is like shopping for a car and he flashes back to when he used to sell cars for a second. This is also the Sal and Ken episode where they have their little date, which I was remembering not liking. I was like, oh no, this is really awkward and stuff. It's honestly not that awkward, and it was actually pretty good. Don, this is also one where Bert tells Don he's going to need to wear his tuxedo more often, and he says the sausage is made or something. Or is that in a different scene? I don't remember. But yes, the accusation of cheating is this episode from Jimmy. It's really interesting to reveal that Jimmy probably did think and know that they were sleeping with each other the whole time. It sort of makes you recontextualize all of his scenes, especially the scene at the end of the Bobbie crash episode where he comes in to thank Don. Yeah, that's that's everything. Harry gets told to shut the fuck up about the painting. Another Harry kind of subplot here. And Don buys a new car. Oh, they're also in the park where they leave all the trash. How could we forget? But yeah, that's like is that an A or a B episode? Let me think again. The painting one is whatever. The car one is okay. The Sal and Ken thing is okay. The last scene is great. First Anna is cool. Jane and Joan is pretty great though. Oh, Jane fired. I was trying to realize what the little word next to Jane I had written down was. I tried to fit all these notes on one page, so forgive me. Is it A or B? I feel like this could be the top of B tier. Not too much is happening that I truly love in this episode, so I think we'll put it there. Put her there. Now we got episode 8. Oh my goodness. Betty is spiraling because she's trying to find some evidence on that no-good Don Draper. So this is also preceding this. So Betty doesn't do anything about the cheating room immediately. Oh, also this is the vomit. She vomits at the end of that episode. I referenced that earlier. Moving firmly into episode 8. So they have the house party thing with Duck and Roger and Mona and the guy that's from American Aviation or something. He might be in the CIA or something. Him and his wife. They're at the Veterans Day thing. And then also, like, he's the one that gets them the tip-off that they should be going to California, where they go later in the season for the aerospace stuff. But there's that. There's the Joan TV stuff, which is some of the, it's not the most depressing stuff, and it's like the opposite of cathartic. It's like some of the worst stuff in the whole show, in a good way. It's like you feel so bad for Joan. She's having so much fun. She's doing so great. She's got the upward mobility that Peggy has for a second, and then they hire some little kid. And this little kid is like kind of saying what you might say in that situation. I think part of the trauma of this episode is you like, if I was in that scenario, I probably would make those same jokes of like, I don't really know anything, so don't get mad at me for not knowing anything. I don't know anything. That makes one of us that knows what's going on here, and it just crushing Joan and not like giving any levity at all. So it feels like I'm like hurting Joan. It's not nice. Peggy Church ad, true. These ladies didn't like, they needed to leave some room for the Holy Ghost. That's all I'm going to say about that. And this is also the weirdest ending in Mad Men history, I think, which is the priest singing, and then we cut through a bunch of things. It's also a very long shot. It reminds me very much of the Van Alden scenes from Boardwalk Empire Season 1 when he's in his weird little house. Not his actual house with his wife, but his little like accommodation where he's in Atlantic City. Can you tell I've been watching Boardwalk Empire Season 1 while I was watching this? It's just like creepy and such a little thing, and there's such a little bed and it's such a little room, and there's like a desk, and it's like before there's like computers or TVs or anything, so there's nothing in there, and it's like, ugh, I don't like the environment of this at all. And instead he gets out his creepy guitar and he starts singing this priest. But anyway, that's how they end the episode. First Greg. Oh, this is the first proper Greg scene where he's like, bitch, go get me water or something. Like, oh, no. It's just like, we hate this guy. I don't think this is the scene where it's when she tries to like ride him and he's like seriously offended by this. But anyway, there was no one before Greg. And in the Betty spiraling, which is probably the best stuff in this episode, we get the scene where she's like creepily watching Don as he's sleeping, and then he wakes up and she's like there and she's post shower or whatever, and she has like the "Do you hate me" thing, and Don like breaks at that. I think that's a really great Betty scene. So this one's probably definitely A tier, right? But it's somewhere in here. Jimmy's really funny. So I probably like the Jimmy stuff better. But season 2, episode 8 goes there. I don't know, there's a lot of Roger stuff. Roger and Don are very funny at that party together. I think we might push it up this far. And then Duck not being able to get a date and apologizing and stuff like that, that was kind of cute. His date cancelled, guys. Episode 9 is that classic Freddy episode. This is obviously an S tier episode. This is probably the best episode of the season so far. The Crash one is really good, though. But this Freddy stuff makes you, like, love Freddy so much, and then you're so excited whenever he shows up moving forward, and it's very effective. If we did a Shonen Jump character popularity poll, Freddy would probably be in the top 10, and he probably shouldn't be, but it's because of this episode. But everything about this episode is great. Them, like, parading around the city. There's obviously a lot of Roger, so... that gives you the makings of an S-tier episode, I'll tell you that much. So this is the Freddy goodbye. He pisses himself. They have to take over. They have to fire him. This is the blood drive episode. They're talking about the blood drive a lot. Marilyn has just died. Joan is crying in Roger's room, which was kind of cute, but then they kind of have a fight. This is also, of course, this has one of the all-time Don and Roger bar scenes. I think it's only the second one in the show so far. They'll obviously have another one that's probably better in Season 3. Obviously, the best one is in Season 7, Part 2. But this is a great one. That convinces Roger to divorce Mona and marry Jane. Mary Jane? Incredible. So I was like, oh yeah, the Freddy stuff. And then I kind of felt bad. I was like, it's just the Freddy stuff. Should I really like it this much? And I'm remembering the Roger stuff at the end, which is like incredibly great. So this episode is absolutely the best episode so far. More Betty spiraling in this episode. Like Carla is clearly looking after the kids. That was fun. Or Don saying his name is Tilden Katz, which is Rachel's husband's name. Showing that he internalized that when he's drunk was a very interesting Don moment. There's sort of Peggy and Pete have a fight over like how they both benefited from Freddy's like downfall. That's interesting stuff. I have setup written down, but who knows what the setup is for. Those are the main things. All the Freddy stuff. Finding out Freddy was like a great Nazi killer is an incredible piece of characterization. His goodbye to Don is very cute. His goodbye with Roger even is very cute. Their funny interaction with the bouncer outside the fucking thing is great. Freddy just fucking off and somehow finding himself with Jimmy and then Don punching Jimmy. All that stuff is great. What an episode. What can I say? Top of S tier so far. Will it stay there? No, probably not. Will there be a single episode not an S tier from now on? Yes, and I think that one is episode 10. So my goodness, what a transition. I do this professionally. That's technically not true. Betty's dad had a stroke. Who cares? Remember when Roger said that about what do women want? But true. Gene is not my favorite character, so whenever he's on screen, it's kind of annoying. There is some really great stuff in this episode, so it's definitely not going any lower than A tier. Betty's scene with her maid, her childhood maid, is an incredible scene. It's a very well-written scene, too. The monologue the maid has about, like, as soon as you leave that door, you'll remember him as he was, is very poignant and like, wise and very good. There's also Glenn's stuff at the end of this episode, which I forgot about. And then the Helen conversation Betty has about how Don's not living here is great. Hildy hug? Oh, yeah, because Harry... This is also the Harry baby shower episode, and there's a callback to him and Hildy sleeping together, they're just cute, and I love it as a piece of, like, continuity. This is also Paul, like, they're excited they're going to California. Don gives them the prep talk about what they need to do in California, and then Don decides he's going to California, because he goes with Betty, and then they sleep together, obviously, and then he thinks he's going home, but then it turns out she tells him to leave again, so he says, fuck it, I'm going to California. But yes. Oh, this is the big adoption episode, true. No, actually, it isn't. But this is the setup. Remember how I said it was across 2 episodes? So Pete talks to his family about adoption in this episode, and there's a scene with his brother. I really like Pete's brother. I think I said that last time, but I think he's like of the like C-tier Mad Men characters who are barely in it. He might be like my favorite in that category. I think I feel like I've never seen a performance like that, and it's not like it's remarkably special, like it's a Boardwalk Empire character or something. But it's like very uniquely, like kind of charming and odd, but also like kind of like Pete, where it's like he's not Don, but he's got like something going on, and it's very interesting. And whenever he answers a question, it's very like confident and short. I don't know. It's a very interesting portrayal and a very interesting written side character. And him and Pete's relationship is really interesting too, because it's not like he is the big brother, but he never like pulls it on Pete, and they always feel very equal. What an interesting dynamic. And my favorite of which is probably, well, it's really funny when they're deciding that they're not going to search for their mother's body anymore. That's a great scene. But the second last episode stuff with Pete kind of talking him out of cheating, all that stuff is so great. But that's literally 70 episodes from now, so we can talk about that later. That is my default biding time vamping noise, and it is Chris Benoit's theme song, so that's odd. But it's in my head forever, I'm pretty sure. Yes, adoption, the discards. Oh yeah, the mother says it's good for some, but you're taking from the discards or something, and he tells her to fuck off. It's pretty great. But true. What does that say? Oh, we meet Betty's brother for the first time. Her brother is also an interesting character. His last appearance really is season 3, I think, with the Gene death episode, because he's not in it at the very end. Though they do mention him. But true. Oh, and the great Gene scene where he says he has no people. How can you trust somebody like that to Don? Which is a great little line. They're doing like a puzzle or something. We also meet Judy or whatever. No, Judy is Pete's wife's name. It might also be Betty's brother's wife's name, now that I think about it. I can't remember right now. But true. And then the Betty and the brother have that scene in front of their mother's portrait or whatever. It's great. And he comes in through the window and they feel like little kids. It's great. So that episode is pretty good. Episode 10, Whore. I don't know, Jimmy stuff is good. Episode 8 stuff is good. That stuff's really good. Let me think. 8 or 10, which is better? This one does have Happy Birthday, which is pretty funny. I would probably say that episode 8 is better. That's definitive. We've got to move on. Now we get into the 3-episode run of a lifetime at the end here. I'm pretty sure they're all definitely going in S tier. So first we have the Nomads California episode. Don just left that boy Pete to do it by himself, and then he like flaunts it in episode 13 and makes Pete love him. I don't think this is as good as the Freddy episode, but I think it's definitely better than the other 2 we have in S tier so far. So we have the Nomads. Joy is the girl's name. I remembered it. A very pretty girl that Don meets, and they go away. All their scenes are really interesting, like trying to figure out who she is, and she's like dropped out of college, and those aren't her kids. She reads books, but sex is good. Books is just okay. I remember these lines, and I deliver them just as well. There's other stuff. Her father is super interesting. There's like a fighting couple around with this old lady and this like Mexican guy. And then this guy shows up with kids later, and that's a good scene. There's a crack in the thing. Don gives away his room. She takes her top off in the pool. Don collapses. They name places or whatever. Everything with them is like super interesting stuff that I like a lot. This is also the Bob Dylan episode. Betty and her, Peggy rather, and her new boyfriend Smitty going away. Wait, is Smitty the other one? Why can't I remember the other name? Kurt. I feel like Kurt is the gay one. I would definitely know this if I wasn't recording, but you can't think when you're recording. That's just the way it be. Anyway, he says he's gay and he cuts Peggy's hair in this episode. That's kind of a cute subplot. The Betty, why do I keep choosing the worst boys line is cute. And also, She hasn't chosen that many bad ones, but she will go on to choose exclusively bad ones until the great Stan shows up, everybody's favorite. But Abe is terrible. Duck is terrible. And I guess that's the extent of her love interest, right? Well, I guess Ted. We love Ted. So, he wasn't so bad. Pete trying. What the fuck does that mean? Oh, Pete trying when he's in California is really cute. He's trying to impress John. He's trying to hang out with Don. Don doesn't want to hang out with him. He's trying to flirt with girls that pick up his papers or whatever. It's pretty great. He's by the pool. He can't drive, Don. Oh, this is Roger having the meeting with his divorce lawyer, which is a funny scene. Where he's like trying to bolster that Mona's not going to get anything. And then the lawyer's got to be like, Mona has the license. You got to pay her literally everything you have, idiot. And then he's like, fuck. And then he sees Duck outside. And I think the implication is that that guy did represent Duck but lost. Because I think I always thought he represented Duck's wife and beat Duck. But there was a line in there that made me think the other way this time. So I don't know. It's probably left up to implication. Not really interpretation. Well, everything's up for interpretation. This is art after all. But you know what I mean. Oh, and this is where Duck sets up the PPPL thing. PPPL? There's only 2 P's. Putnam, Pow, and Low. We all know. Oh, and that guy's pal. St. John Pow. Because Lane tells him to fuck off later. It's pretty cool. You're fired for disloyalty. Remember he says like 3 things? You're fired for lack of character. I can almost do the voice. Both of those lines, when I started, I almost had the voice. So everybody write that down. I wrote this down. That's a great scene. I do like the Duck thing. He drinks. That's actually the first time. The other like little British boy that's with there is like really annoying, and they tell him to fuck off. That was great. It's like my computer crashed, but that's just a noise I make. That's another vamping noise. It's not the Chris Benoit theme song. It didn't kill anybody. Now, see, I got jokes. Now, those last 2 jokes weren't intentional. I just had to go with them. Now, that's kind of it for this episode. It's great. It's tremendous. That pool place they're at, California. We love the California episodes no matter what happens. This is probably the only time we get 2 back-to-back California episodes. We better enjoy it while it lasts. Him ripping out the page of the book to write Anna's address on it is interesting. There is a little bit of retconning going on here. It's actually in 2 directions, and it has to do with the next episode. So pretend I'm kind of talking about the next episode too. Like, Don should definitely be visiting more often, and he should definitely know the address. He shouldn't have to ask for it. First of all, because he bought the house, which is something they even say in the next episode. So that's probably not a retcon, but it's like, he hasn't been there in a while, so he forgot it, I guess, and he didn't have it written down somewhere. That kind of makes sense. Because he calls Anna, right? Because he says Dick Whitman, and the way he immediately says Dick Whitman is very off-putting and very cool. It's like a mic drop moment. What the fuck was I saying? Oh, there's a little bit of retconning, I think, where it's like, he should have been seeing her more often, and it's implied later that, like, he would come, like, yeah. Oh, actually, no, the retcon is, like, he's going to California, and he seems to have not even really thought about going to see Anna until the end of the first episode in California. So it's not really a retcon, it's sort of like I feel like Don should be thinking about this immediately. He should be thinking about the opportunity of going to California to see Anna. But I get it. I don't know. I kind of buy that, like, he hadn't really seen her since Sally had been born or since they had gotten married, which I think was the same year, basically. Because he was preoccupied. And he did send her the book, so they keep some sort of correspondence, I guess. And obviously this is the great twist where at the end of the first episode, you think he's probably talking about Rachel when he's sending somebody the book, and actually he was sending it to Anna. And also he signs it D, so Dick, not Don. This is also where we get the extended flashback. We're talking about episode 12 here. There's another soft retconning thing. Oh, this is... I don't know if this is just a case of the pilot being too strong in its verbiage for Don. I think the pilot definitely gives off the impression that Don never really loved Betty. And episode 12 gives off the impression that he was very in love with Betty. And I think some of the power in the scene where, like, Betty says, "Do you hate me?" And Don goes like, "Oh, God, no," or whatever, and he has a cry. That always felt more powerful to me from the perspective of, like, he never loved her. And I feel like definitely my very first time watching the show, there is, like, a resentment towards Betty because, like, you were never even really Don's wife anyway, bitch. He didn't actually like you or something. As if that, like, makes it any better or makes Betty less of a victim. But that's that male brain getting in the way. And sort of biasing you against Betty. The more I watch it, the more distant I am from those feelings particularly. And again, I don't necessarily think this is a contradiction or a retcon. I'm just using that language because it's fun. But yeah, it's like, is Don just being oddly performative with Rachel there? Which does work, of, like, he's trying to, like, kind of impress her or something, or be like, I bet you didn't know this, but right now I'm depressed, so I've been thinking some sad thoughts or something. And it is true that, like, the whole point of that scene is Rachel sees through it entirely. Like, he's talking about how love doesn't exist as he's falling in love with a girl. But I don't know, I feel like for him to have this memory of being so in love with Betty that he had to run to Anna and he's, like, smitten over her, and then to say, like, the lightning bolt doesn't exist or whatever, seems interesting. Now, the lightning bolt is certainly not sustained, and that's definitely a thing that Mad Men talks about a lot, but that's not really what he said. Don is never as cynical as he is in that one scene in the pilot, I guess. But there are moments where he kind of is. Like the monologue he'll have about loving his kids to Megan in, like, season 6 or whatever. That kind of plays off that. So it's all in there, I guess, which I think is good. It's like a big hodgepodge contradiction. That's definitely true of all the Mad Men characters. It's also been on the brain because Boardwalk Empire in season 1 and towards the beginning, I'm pretty sure has a pretty terrible timeline retcon. Should I go into this at all? Whatever, I can't stop myself. They, like, imply that Nucky's wife died, like, 7 years before the story began, when it's definitely, like, 22 years before the story began later, which is a big jump. And also, the later one makes a lot more sense. But Nucky's wife, like, dies around when Jimmy is born, and that's, like, a big thing, especially later on. Anyway, that's I'm probably going to do one of these videos for Boardwalk Empire, so we can talk about that more then. But I have a lot to say about that. Can you tell? Also, this is like cross-advertising. My goodness, I'm a genius. I'm a marketing god. Anyway, episode 12. Now, we haven't really gone over the plot lines, but obviously Anna in the flashbacks, the Peggy Popsicle account. This is when the adoption / Pete's father-in-law pulling Clearasil is. This is all the Bert scenes with his sister and with Roger and the meeting and them deciding to sell. Betty's call with her friend who she made cheat on her husband. I think the one of that was in a previous episode too. We didn't really talk about it, but that's an incredible scene. Oh, and the Joan rape scene is in this episode. That's hilarious, guys. Haha. That's like the easily the worst scene in Mad Men, I think. Like in terms of how it makes you feel, not in terms of like execution or it actually being bad. My goodness, is Greg like the worst character ever? This is what. Did you hear the lineup I just went down? Is it better than the Freddy episode? It almost has to be, right? But I don't know if, I kind of spoiled it at the beginning, but the best episode in this season is the one we haven't ranked yet. There's no way the Freddy episode could be the third best episode of the season, right? Popsicle account. That was pretty great. Bert's sister, every scene she's in is tremendous. Betty Cole with her friend, all the Anna stuff. I think we're correct in this ranking here. Oh, also, Peggy gets her office, and she has a scene with Roger. It's cute, and it's great. And that's also when Roger makes the comment that causes the rape, so not very nice, Roger. But yes, Season 2, Episode 12 is tremendous stuff. This is news to nobody. And then Season 2, Episode 13 is definitely the best episode of the season, the best episode of the show so far, I dare say. What did I have ranked as the best episode from Season 1? I feel like this should be obvious, but I honestly can't remember what I had. I kind of want to get it up on my phone just to check. There really isn't a definitive one. Would it just have been episode 13? I don't think I had episode 10 at the tippy top. I know episode 1 was also in, what do you call it? S tier. But anyway, let me try and multitask, and while I'm typing this through, try and tell you what was in this episode. Oh my goodness, it was the Pete and Peggy scene. It's probably the biggest built-up scene in the whole show so far. And it is interesting. Because the other biggest built-up scene in all of Mad Men is obviously Betty finding out the truth. And that's season 3, episode 11. Which, again, might be the best episode in the show. We don't know yet. God damn, season 3 might have a better final 3-episode run than even this one. That's crazy. I know season 7A does. Anyway. I was in the middle of a thought there. And it wasn't just looking up my fucking old video. Fuck. I'm completely blank. I was talking about, build-ups and stuff. Because season 4 onwards, again, everybody's favorite part of the show, there really is no long-term build-up, really. Like, there's not like a Megan scene where she catches him cheating or something, and that's been built up for 2 seasons. It's all just kind of seasonal stuff and character stuff. And again, it's not like a negative or something. It's all my favorite stuff in the whole show. But it is interesting that season 2 had this tremendous blow-off scene with Peggy and Pete where everything came to a head, and it's a 5-minute scene, and it's so long, and everything is said, and the character reactions and the interactions are all tremendous. And then they they just had to outdo it with season 3. It's like, man, this is crazy. And I guess this would reflect sort of the split I was talking about last time, where there's like a kind of a philosophical split between the first part of the show and the second part of the show, where the first part is more focused and serious and probably poetic in a sense. It does long-term build-offs and payoffs more, which is probably true. When you originally start the show, you have sort of certain plot points in mind, rather. And these are all established in season 1, right? Peggy and Pete is like a season 1 thing. It's blown off in the end of season 2. Betty and the truth and Don stuff is season 1 stuff. And it's paid off at the end of season 3. And by the end of season 3, basically all of the season 1 stuff has definitely been blown off. And then we just sort of build from there. And we become a funny show, which is better. But true. Talking about this episode. Hold on, I got up my tier list from last time. What did I have as number 1? I did just have the election one. Which I always think of as just the election episode, but it is, of course, the Pete and Don confrontation episode. I had 12, 13, 10, then 6, then 1 last time. We've got more S tiers. Hold on, let me bring that back up. And we do actually have the same amount of B tier. Oh, actually, no, there were no B tier episodes last time. They were all A tier. And that's crazy. I don't know if season 2, episode 7 is necessarily worse than every season 1 episode. But alas, this is how the cookie is crumbled. Anyway, we haven't finished talking about this finale yet. Don returns to Betty into the office. Every scene is great. We kind of did talk about that. This is also, of course, the Cuban Missile Crisis episode. This is the payoff of the Priest episode. The Priest season-long thingy where the Priest definitely iterates to Peggy, I don't know why. It's some weird thing where he wants Petty to ask him for forgiveness or something. It's weird Priest stuff. Not good. But then it actually, you realize the point of the Priest storyline the whole season is that Petty does feel... Petty? That's Betty and Peggy together. Peggy does feel guilty about something. She does feel the need to get right with something, and it's not with God. It's that she feels like she owes it to Pete to tell him about their kid. Which she probably does owe it to him, I guess. And so she does that. And then the last scene of her in the season is her going to sleep peacefully and doing a little Christian cross thing on her chest. It's great. Also, this is probably the best Betty stuff all season, but she's pregnant. She has the scene with the doctor. She has the scene with Francine in the hair salon that's really great. There's just another annoying woman here that's like, don't talk about the missile crisis. You're upsetting my daughter or whatever. It's very funny. And then she has the adventure at the bar where she sleeps with the one dude and gets a little bit of cheat and revenge. All that stuff is really great. I like all that stuff. But yes, Duck making the mistake of trusting Pete and it's so interesting. Pete gets the promotion he was complaining about so much not getting in season 1. And it means nothing to him, because what he actually wanted the whole time was Don to tell him that he did a good job. And he throws the job away so Don can kind of tell him he did a good job. And then in the end, next season, he has to fight with Ken for head of accounts, and then he doesn't even win it. So, it's great. It's interesting. It's just like Pete really just does want validation from Peggy and from Don. And he kind of gets it from Don here, and he definitely doesn't get it from Peggy here. I guess there's still more to say about that Peggy scene. Like, the monologue is so perfectly encapsulating. It's such great self-analysis of Pete's character on the show's part, where it's like, Pete really can be great. He really can be a good guy. He really could be a great boyfriend/husband, like 40% of the time. And then and then 50% of the time, he's the fucking worst of all time. And then 10% of the time, he's just kind of stupid. Though those last two are kind of mixed together a lot. But he is just like, and this was definitely the case in season 1, he would be really nice to Peggy, then he'd be really cruel to Peggy. And it'd be because he saw her dancing and it made him jealous a little bit, so he took it out on her. And even throughout this season, it's like, he totally like did a cowardly thing to Freddie. And Peggy doesn't respect it at all. And then he like complimented her on her hair and her office and stuff like that, which she did like. But she's like got she understands enough about him to understand that this is not a good road to go by. She does not want to fix this boy. She like understands him totally, and dresses him down. And he needed to hear it, and then they move on. And it's sad, and Peter's so destroyed. He's like, "Why did you tell me this?" He's so upset. And obviously, mixed in with that is the confession that he had a baby. It's tremendous. What can I say? It's also watching this today. Well, did I watch it yesterday? I think I watched it yesterday. My goodness, I can't remember these things. Her monologue also about like it's the way she explained the Pete self-analysis I just went over. She says like there's like you're there and then it's not, and like you want to like look for it, but you just realize it's gone or something. I didn't realize until literally this watch through that she's also talking about herself, right? It's like the kid and that it's gone, and she thinks like or her innocence or whatever was represented in her having a kid. And it's like, but it's just gone, and you kind of got to move forward. It's also like a meta thing about like shippers and their relationship, right? Of like maybe there were people that wanted them to be together, but like the moment has passed, and you just got to kind of move forward. And in a way that's like the advice Don gave her, right? Does Pete ever really move forward? Did he really need Don to give him the move forward speech the whole time? Is that the point of his character? Pete gets his stuff together in the end anyway, so he didn't need it. I think that's the extent of what happened, right? I went over everything. Oh, and this is a great payoff to like everything that's happened this season, like the duck stuff. Also, the Lois stuff. For the first 3 episodes, Lois is Don's secretary. She's pretty terrible at it. She gets fired, and then even like she gets a scene in the finale where she's like begging the boys to like get her off the switchboard if they get to stay after the merger. And all that's funny. They were all freaking out. It's very funny. They always freak out when something seems like it's gonna happen, because they're a bunch of P words. We don't say disgusting language around here. But I think that's the extent of my grand old season 2, episode 2 list. In the end, is season 2 better than season 1? It has more S-tier episodes. The final run is incredible. There's a payoff in the Pete Peggy scene that is not replicated in season 1. But the beginning is a bit choppy. I need to make a decision. Those last like 3 episodes are so well written, the way they fold into each other, the way everything like happens. And there's some other great ones, like episode 9 is right there. That's an all-time Mad Men episode. So is episode 5. Episode 4 is pretty great too. I'm kind of talking myself into saying that season 2 is better than season 1, but I kind of feel like it's not true in my heart. So which direction do we go? Why don't we put a pin in it? Why don't we say we're not sure, and we'll come back with season 3 and see if it helps us part them? Because I bet it will. Everything that hasn't happened in the old office will happen in this next season. I'm remembering For a lot of this review, whenever I've thought about season 3, I've thought about the dog food episode. But I think that is the Betty finding out episode too. I can't remember. Also, I don't remember a lot of season 3, episode 12. Obviously, 13 and 11 are probably the two episodes that are probably way better than anything we've had so far. Way better is a bit of an extreme terminology, don't you think? But is like the rest of season 3 any good? Like, season 3, episode 3. What the fuck is going on in that? We'll never know. Probably Henry flirting with Betty. But, you know, we'll make that determination about the quality of season 3 next time. Can you believe it? So we'll be back soon. Don't touch that dial. I'm sure I think it was probably less than a week I watched all these episodes, so we might be back just as quick. Support links in the description below. Thanks.